Okay, hello everyone. I'm back. I'm back. What does that mean? Well, believe it or not, I actually missed a day yesterday. But for you, you will have no idea because, believe it or not, I actually have pre recorded some of these and have banked some days in anticipation of the fact that I will probably miss some days. So there's been days where I do two drawings. There's been like different. I started recording drawings before I even started the series, so I have these in store to not mess up the flow of what you're experiencing. But it is true that yesterday was the first day, really the first day that I missed for drawing. And it's kind of a bummer because I was really enjoying the consistency of the last 9 days. And so it was to kind of day 10, like even through some pretty chaotic schedules, I was still able to find some time to draw and do a recording. But such is life. This was kind of to be expected. And so now all I can do is try and do the next best drawing. And you may notice that, again, my setting has changed. I think the last like probably 4 or 5 days, every single drawing is in a different place. And those who used to follow me on the streaming will kind of be familiar with this. I travel a ton, like my location is always moving. And even when I'm kind of like, stable in one location. So for example, I'm in New York City right now and have been for, the last couple, I guess the last 4 or 5 days. Even in New York City, I tend to jump around, so I have access to like a recording studio space, and so depending on the availability of a location is where I'll do the recording. So that's another reason actually that I'm kind of doing minimal editing. This is, I guess, like not art talk. This is community talk, let's say. Another reason I'm not really doing any editing is because I know that the setting will change so much. It's like kind of futile to create like a consistent atmosphere with my like setup and my scene and everything like that. But anyway, this part doesn't even matter. What matters is the art and the drawing and doing the drawing and doing the consistency. And I was like kind of thinking back to one of the concepts I was talking about 2 drawings ago that I really liked, which was like, what were the 3 factors that kind of go into what makes potentially a good drawing session? And it was about your physical health, like how you feel in terms of being tired. Do you feel well nourished? Is it the morning coffee and like, really well rested, nice, easing into the day? The second is it, are you inspired? Like, do you feel super motivated or inspired to draw, where you can draw on a lot of, if you have an inspiration, you can really kind of get a great drawing session done just from feeling that flow state and that inspiration and that drive to make art. And then the last one is this idea of like being openness and open-mindedness. And so, I was kind of thinking about that. And as I was about to start my drawing today, I was like, okay, how would I rank these? And I don't want to make this like a part of every single video where I think about these things, or at least like probably I'm always thinking about them at least a little bit, but I don't want to always talk about it. But for the sake of kind of like consistency, let's say for today, like I feel pretty good generally. Like of course I'm a little tired. You can see that I'm recording again at nighttime rather than in the day, which is never my ideal. I always like to prefer to start with the drawing as opposed to end the day with the drawing, but that's how it goes sometimes. And then in terms of inspiration, since I didn't draw yesterday, I'm actually super motivated to draw again. So skipping a day can actually be really nice for curing that feeling of burnout, where just from doing something every single day, you kind of naturally get like a little bit of burnout from it. And then, so feeling a little inspired, and then I have the open-mindedness, and I feel like, kind of accepting the flow of what will happen here. So with that being said, what will happen here? So I'm going to do another drawing. I noticed that I've been doing like mostly gesture has been the emphasis of these last days, with like one block in there. And so I think today I'm going to do a block in drawing. I'm going to pick kind of an easy reference, and I'm going to focus on line because I've been talking about this a little bit and it's really been in the back of my mind. And so today let's think about like line and how to use this. And we'll talk about this concept of line as we continue on. But it's actually it's considered like one of the fundamental building blocks or fundamental elements of art is this idea of line, because it's so critical, and it's more than just like drawing a line. Like there's so many different properties that can come with a line, and therefore like it's provides such a wide array of like the artistic utility and value that it can have. So for example, you can have like a thick line or a thin line and everything in between, every thickness and thinness in between. You can have lines that are like connected all the way through, or you can have lines that are lost and then found again. You can have lines that are kind of like more calligraphic in the sense that they start thick and then they become thin again and then they vary in thickness again, and so on and so forth. And all of these types of lines have a different effect and a different feeling. And so like I think the best way to understand that is this idea of like, if you ever see kind of, you know, those drawings that are really scratchy where the lines are kind of being drawn like this, and there's a lot of people that do drawings with like pen drawings where they do a portrait. I've seen a lot of different versions of this. They'll do a portrait with like a pen and just kind of like scribble all over the place and scratch it out. And it immediately has this like kind of like horror movie effect on it, because these kinds of lines that are scratchy or like uncertain convey the sense of anxiety, and they work really, really well in that example. And you know, likewise, they might not be as obvious to you, but we can also find kind of the opposite side of that spectrum where you have lines that are very delicate and flowy and not pressed too hard, and like these can kind of convey like a sense of elegance or a sense of beauty. And so where you choose to place each of these lines on a drawing has a huge effect on how the reader sees it. So even just like, you know, a stick figure, two people that are thinking about line in different ways can actually come up with an entirely different stick figure that gives you a different feeling, and like fills the space in a different way. And so we are going to try and take that idea. I'm going to try and take that idea and kind of zoom out on it a little bit in drawing, in this line drawing today. So I've already talked quite a bit, too much probably. So let's just get into it. Okay, drawing is finished. And for some reason, that felt like a battle today. So I went into this with a timer, which is not something I always do for drawings, but I'm like a bit conscious of my schedule right now. But it's also a nice exercise to kind of put yourself under that time pressure sometimes, just to help, cauterize some of these ideas and force you to make decisions a little bit faster, just speeding up your art process. It also can like help pull out mistakes that you're making, that like bad habits, because when you're under the clock, you tend to go to habits. And so I will say that the clock revealed nicely like this connection that I have to the process. I had no trouble sticking with the 2D construction and then going to the 3D construction. It got a little bit muddied. It wasn't perfect. So like there's still more to work on there. More of that bad habit is still there of kind of like skipping that process or like skipping past those steps. Um, and I did jump ahead to do like a little bit of blocking of the shadows, but more because it was like for example on the neck there was like a really nice shadow line, and I was like, okay, I think I should put this in. And also I wanted to like fill in some dark spots like the upper lip and the pupils to kind of like add a little bit more emphasis in the spirit of line. So I'm not gonna say that I like abandoned my process. Like I didn't just start drawing randomly and like kind of revert to old bad habits. So that was actually really nice. But going against the clock just generally did feel like a battle to solve some like kind of tougher issues within this drawing. So the pose in general was pretty easy. The hair presents some challenges just because like the proportions are so sensitive with something like this. Like if you have too much hair, it's just gonna look so awkward, and likewise too little hair. So I actually like abused line, or utilized, abused, exploited. I don't know which is the right term here to use. In the sense that like I left the top of the head unfinished, and I didn't create a line over the top to like, this was done in favor of the spirit of like, your eyes will naturally fill in that line in the proportion that probably feels comfortable. So I like that decision that I did. I also want to talk broadly about my approach to line. So I actually started the drawing with like really rough, sketchy, anxiety-filled lines, like searching lines, let's say, I think is like one of the ways that they're often described. And then I erased the searching lines once I had some confidence on where to put things, and then put the correct line in. And ideally, you would want to be able to go straight to the correct line, but like this is the first day I'm really practicing line, and I'm also, still working on understanding proportion. Like I still need to kind of search a little bit. I don't always get it right on the first try. So I actually think that approach is okay. The only problem is the sketchbook page gets very dirty because you get like the smudging from the side of your hand, or just across your fingers as well. And that can kind of mess up some of that delicacy of the line, like especially if you're trying to do faint lines and then you push your hand over them a couple times, it actually does kind of ruin that piece of that aesthetic of the drawing. But generally I'm kind of comfortable with the way I put in some of the lines. So like, for example, I like the way that I lightly put in the construction lines on the cheeks, and on the chin, and even around the nose. I think is kind of nice. I think it's a bit tough right now for me to understand like how to treat the lines around the eyes, like what should be dark and what should be light. But I think this was like a nice first attempt. So the next thing that I will do is likely do some master copies of drawings that use line really, really well, and see what I can learn from that. And then, I mean, it's hard to find it on the same reference, right? But if you can, that's like a dream, and I've talked about that. But then I will try and go back and see like what I did differently than they are doing in their decisions. And when I draw it, I will again compare my drawing to their drawing and trying to understand some of the differences there. And if I can find a line drawing where I can also find the reference, that's like the best, because then I will also do a drawing just off the reference, not looking at how the master did it. And then I can compare my choices to the master's choices, and that really brings out these like differences. So, I mean, it's hard for me to judge if I did a good job with line. I think this was like a nice first exercise. I think the pose was like really friendly. Like there's nothing too weird about this. Like there's a little bit of a down tilt, but for the most part, it's like that natural 3/4 that I've probably drawn, 500 times in my life. So there was kind of no issue there. So yeah, let's see. I will say like a somewhat successful drawing, and something that we kind of need to experiment with, and we'll work through this process in the same way that we did with gesture and process. And of course, I don't want to forget about those concepts. So we might do a couple days of flying, a couple days of gesture, bounce back and forth. But I just want to kind of add a little bit of diversity to the training. Also, maybe let some of that gesture stuff. I don't want to overtrain it. I think a lot of this will be the opening monologue maybe in the next couple days. But a lot of concepts from working out and exercising, if you're familiar with like late weight lifting or like sports training, can actually apply directly to the way that you think about art. And these ideas of like overtraining and like kind of modes for training and mentality for training apply the same way for art as they do for exercise, and frankly for most things in life. But yeah, this is what I find. Like I can always draw an analogy to my exercise, to like working out and lifting, to drawing. But yeah, that'll be another topic for another day. I think this video is already going to be pretty long. So that's it for day 10. I guess this was. We'll see you for day 11 tomorrow.